Learning French is not about how much information you can collect. You can spend months watching French videos, memorizing vocabulary, studying grammar, and still feel stuck when it comes time to actually speak. And that's because you don't need more information, you need a blueprint. Salut, je m'appelle Oma, je suis professeure de français native basée à Paris. Je crée du contenu sur les langues et j'accompagne mes élèves en ligne pour les aider à gagner en confiance et à communiquer en français. In this video, I'm sharing my FIP method, the 3-step blueprint I would follow if I had to restart French from zero. We'll cover foundations, building the essential tools you need first, immersion, how to surround yourself with French so that you can actually absorb the language, and personalization, creating a learning system that fits your goals and your lifestyle. And stay until the end because I prepared a resource that helps you start your French journey. On y va. First things first, you need strong foundations. Because without them, learning French can feel like collecting a bunch of puzzle pieces without actually knowing how they fit together. And this is something I see all the time with my students. Many beginners spend months collecting vocabulary, but they don't actually know how to build sentences. Honestly, this is where I think a lot of learners go wrong. They feel like they need to know everything before they can start speaking, and that's simply not true. You need the right building blocks, not every single brick. What should you actually focus on first? Well, I like to break it down into 3 areas: communication, grammar, and vocabulary. Let's start with communication. Remember, your goal isn't to have a perfect French, it's to survive everyday conversations. Can you greet someone, introduce yourself, ask for help, order food, express a simple opinion? Those are the kinds of conversations that build confidence from day one. Also, do not underestimate pronunciation. I'm not talking about your accent here because you don't need to sound like a native speaker to be understood, but you do need to pronounce words clearly enough so that people can understand you. If you want to learn about the 7 mistakes you should never make when you first start learning French, you can watch this video right here. Now, I know the word grammar scares a lot of people, but I promise you don't need to learn everything. Just focus on the grammar that unlocks communication. That means subject pronouns, the present tense, the passé composé, and the futur proche. Now, you may be wondering, why these specific notions? Well, because together they allow you to speak about your life, what you're doing, what you did, and what you're going to do. That's already enough to have lots of beginner conversations. And here's the good news. You don't need to learn hundreds of verbs at the beginning. In fact, if I had to start all over again, these are the 5 verbs that I learned first. Not because they're the easiest, but because you'll be using them literally every single day. Être helps you describe yourself, your identity, and your characteristics. Je suis française. Avoir is essential because it expresses possession. J'ai un livre. But it's also used in lots of everyday expressions. J'ai faim. Parler is a fantastic verb because it belongs to the first group of French verbs, the regular ER verbs. To understand how parler works, you can apply that pattern to many other verbs. S'appeler helps you introduce yourself. Je m'appelle Oma. Also introduces you to reflexive verbs, which you'll be using all the time in French, like se lever or se laver. And finally, aller is incredibly useful because it allows you to talk about the future using the futur proche. Je vais voyager. By mastering these 5 verbs, you already have the tools to create hundreds of useful beginner sentences. Finally, let's talk about vocabulary. This is where I see beginners make one of the biggest mistakes. They memorize huge lists of random words instead of learning the words they'll actually use every day. If you cook every day, learn kitchen vocabulary. If you're traveling, learn travel vocabulary. And if you're a student, learn the vocabulary you actually hear in class. Think in situations: going to the doctor, going in a restaurant, taking a taxi, shopping, introducing yourself. The best vocabulary to learn isn't the biggest types of vocabulary. It's the vocabulary that will actually become a part of your everyday life. Now we're getting to my favorite part, and honestly, this is where I see learners improve the fastest. Not because they're studying more, but because they're living the language instead of just learning it. Immersion is basically surrounding yourself with French, but every single day. And no, that doesn't mean moving to France. It simply means doing the things you already do every day, but in French. When you're cooking, say the ingredients out loud. La tomate, les légumes, je coupe la tomate. When you're cleaning, listen to a French podcast or French music. You could even put post-it notes on objects around your house. This is my favorite one that I do all the time. You can narrate what you're doing internally. For example, j'ouvre la porte, je bois mon café, je regarde les oiseaux. This makes it easier for you to stop translating word for word, but instead start speaking and acting like a native speaker in your target language would. And you'll realize that these tiny habits actually create daily exposure. Now let's talk about input. Input is everything you consume in French. And so the more quality input you have in French, the more natural the language starts to feel. My favorite resources are French YouTube creators, French social media, blogs, podcasts, news articles. The one resource I recommend to almost all of my French students is RFI Français Facile. It covers everyday interesting topics using learner-friendly French so that you get to learn vocabulary in context. I also highly recommend graded readers. They're great because they allow you to read stories adapted to your level instead of straight up jumping into novels that feel impossible to understand. Now for the vocabulary. I personally love using word reference for almost all my languages that I learn. The reason is because it doesn't just translate words, it actually gives you different variations of definitions that are accurate, and they also give you examples. So you're not just learning words, but you're also learning how to use them in context. If you want to translate an entire sentence, Debo is actually also a really great tool because it sounds way more natural than a literal translation. Input is only half of the equation. You also need output. You need to start creating in French. For speaking, you could give yourself little prompts, describe your day, pretend as if you're ordering a coffee, even plan your events for tomorrow, talk about your weekend. You can practice with language exchange partners, AI speaking tools, conversation groups, or even online tutors. For writing, my favorite exercise is journaling. Write a few sentences every day, describe how you're feeling, what happened in your day, your plans. You realize you don't know a word, look it up and literally highlight that word, write it in another color, and save it so you can use it again later. That's how you're going to be able to build vocabulary that is actually useful to you. Finally, let's personalize everything that we have built so far. Have you ever felt like you studied loads of French, but when it comes time to talk about your own life, your job, your hobbies, you don't really have the words? That's because you've probably been learning someone else's vocabulary instead of your own. Your learning should reflect your goals. If you're learning French for business, you need vocabulary connected to meetings, contracts, and negotiations. If you're learning French for healthcare, you need vocabulary related to hospitals, patients, and even medicine. And your schedule also matters too, whether you're studying, whether you're working full-time, or have a lot of free time on your hands. Your study plan should fit your life and reflect how much time you can actually commit to learning French. The same goes for your interests. If you love gaming, learn gaming vocabulary. If you love music, analyze French songs. If you love cooking, watch cooking recipes in French. Learning French doesn't have to feel like a boring school assignment. The more you connect to learning French to things that you genuinely enjoy, the easier it becomes to actually learn it and stay consistent, all the while applying it to your real life and seeing actual progress. And there you have it, your FIP blueprint for learning French. Remember, you don't need to learn everything at once. Build your foundations, immerse yourself consistently, and personalize your learning so French becomes a part of your life. Now, the most important step is take action. Don't just save this video and come back 6 months later. Do one small thing today. Take one small step. And remember the resource that I promised you at the beginning? Oh, I created a beginner French learning toolkit focused on the foundation stage of this method. Inside, you'll find the essential vocabulary, grammar tools, sentence building structures, writing templates, and checklists to help you know exactly what to focus on first. You'll find the link to get yours in the description, along with all the other resources that I mentioned throughout this video. And if you'd like to learn French with me through personalized online lessons, the link to sign up is also in the description. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to be part of our language learning community, and also share this to someone who you know is learning French. Thanks for watching. Toodles!